They say the best way to get promoted from the Championship or any of the divisions is through the playoffs. And I get it. They're absolutely right. You get the drama. You get the day out. It is the best way. I haven't done it as West Ham fans. It is. Does it have the comfort of strolling towards a league title with 6 games to spare and getting 100 points or whatever the case may be? No, it doesn't. But in terms of pure drama, pure entertainment, the playoffs is the way to go. But what a lot of people say as one of the disadvantages of going up and getting promoted through the playoffs is you don't have as much time to focus and choose your transfer targets because you don't know what division you're going to be playing in. Basically, like this season, Burnley could choose their transfer targets for next season a lot earlier than the others because they knew they were going to get promoted. We still don't know who's going to get promoted from the Championship playoffs. But Burnley know they're there. So they've got a head start. Whereas whoever wins the Championship playoffs at the moment, don't know whether they're buying players for the Championship or the Premier League. And when I was listening to that the other day, and it is all true, and I thought, well, hold on a second. I feel West Ham are at a little bit of a disadvantage at the moment because of the director of football situation. Now, what is the director of football situation? Well, if you don't know, it's that West Ham are going to go and look for one. They might have identified one, but there's definitely not one in place at the moment. West Ham want a director of football to oversee all footballing operations. That would be the hiring and firing of a manager, putting into place and overseeing all the scouting network as well. And I'm not entirely sure whether that would be how much that would have to do with Mark Noble's role. It's very, very difficult to believe that Rob Newman would remain in place under such a circumstance. And obviously, Director of Football would by and large be in charge of hiring and firing the players. Recruitment, transfers, and it makes sound sense, doesn't it? Because as we've seen it on numerous times, West Ham changed their manager, they changed their style of football. At least if you've got a Director of Football there, he can maybe say, OK, what we are doing is we're going to buy counter-attacking players that suit a counter-attacking system. And then each manager, even if that manager doesn't work out, we'll get another counter-attacking manager. That way, each person that comes in is comfortable with the squad at their disposal, and they're not looking at putting square pegs in round holes, that sort of thing. You get the idea. However, I couldn't help but think this is a massive disadvantage to us at the moment in the same way because it puts us behind. If we don't have this guy in place yet, I don't know. I find West Ham's straight-jacketed thinking very restrictive. So if you remember going back to when we were looking to recruit a manager, they had to have Premier League experience, X, Y, Z. There was a load of hoops that we had to jump through, which other teams are not restricted by. So we now hear we're going to bring a director of football in. Oh, but it'll be at the end of the season. Okay. Why wasn't it in November? Well, why have we got to wait until the end of the season? Because I do feel it's disadvantaged. Now, I do appreciate that if we might have identified who's going to come in, maybe they're in a job. Okay, maybe they can't come in. Maybe we've highlighted them and they've already started suggesting players. But we're still behind the curve, all right? There's still other clubs already identified and know who they're going to sign for next season. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I'll deal with it in another video. West Ham need just as big a rebuild next season as we've just had. However, one area we do know that we've got to recruit in is Declan Rice's replacement. Now, I would hope, I would pray, I'd be pretty disappointed if West Ham hadn't already identified Declan Rice's replacement. Goodness knows we've had enough notice about it, right? However, I wouldn't put it past the club not to have done that yet, to still be waiting. It seems to be how we do things. I do think in that sense the club can be very, very poorly run. It's like we didn't have a clue who was going to be David Moyes' replacement. I'm not sure we still do. We had to get to a point where we were almost relegated before the club started thinking, oh, we're going to have a little look around now. You feel that with a director of football. You know what? We might need a director of football. We're going to have a little look around now. And you almost, I wouldn't put it past the club if they think, okay, we need to try and identify Declan Rice's replacement. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure if the board retained David Moyes and Rob Newman, they've already looked at players. I don't doubt it for a second. I really don't, okay? But we don't even know if either of those are going to be here yet. And when I say identify a replacement for Declan Rice, I don't just mean one. There's got to be a list of 4 or 5 players. And And they have to know who that is. But what's the contingency plan if Rob Newman and David Moyes go? Does David Sullivan also have a list of 4 or 5 players that have maybe been recommended to him by agents? Maybe he doesn't. Maybe Mark Noble has a list of 4 or 5 players for Declan Rice's replacement. Or maybe they're not doing that, and a director of football is going to come in, and the director of football is going to either A, have a look at it then, or B, he's going to already know. Because anybody that probably thinks they're going to get approached by West Ham for the role of director of football is probably going to have half an eye on the squad, at least. He's probably going to know that's what we need to do. I think there's going to be more scrutiny on that particular transfer than any other I can think of. Because whoever comes in has got the added pressure of being Declan Rice's replacement. How are you going to spend the Declan Rice money? You've seen it with Tottenham. How are they going to spend the Gareth Bale money? It becomes quite a pertinent and well trodden topic in the media when it happens. It will be if West Ham get their 100 million or close to it. How are West Ham going to spend the 100 million? That's what it's all going to be about. And it worries me. This whole director of football thing worries me. I think we should have one. Let me get that absolutely right. I think we should have a director of football. But you can see now that we don't know whether it's going to be Moyes, we don't know whether it's going to be Newman, whether it's director of football, whether it's going to be Mark Noble, whether it's going to be David Sullivan. That's a concern. And even if it was the former, that would still concern me. Because I'm not completely convinced that David Moyes can identify or Rob Newman can identify who should be the replacement for Declan Rice. You got to remember, these are the same people who identified and saw him and recommended Julian Alvarez and said, no, I don't think so. Same with Caicedo, who went to Brighton, who's going to move for probably 70 to 80 million pound himself from Brighton. I don't think he suddenly became a really good player in the last year. It must have been evident 2 years ago. But basically, at the point where we got Alex Crowell, it was recommended that we should go and get Caicedo. We didn't. We decided to get Alex Crowell on loan. There must have been plenty of promise there. He must have been a good player, a really good player. Well, obviously, Brighton wouldn't have bought him. Brighton don't buy these players. So that concerns me. It concerns me at the moment that we maybe don't identify Declan Rice's replacement particularly well. So it's almost like there's concerns wherever you look. That concerns me. The delay on the director of football concerns me. David Sullivan taking advice from agents about who should be Declan Rice's replacement. That concerns me. And I just think the whole thing, could absolutely have been avoided by getting this done earlier. Everything seems like a surprise. Everything seems like a surprise I think particularly to David Sullivan, particularly to the board. Oh my goodness, we need a new manager. Oh my goodness, we need to get a replacement Declan Rice. Oh, we need a director of football. The forward planning, I think, is awful. Now, don't get me wrong. I think they bring a director of football in, then you start to implement and embed forward planning in your club. I think that's the right thing to do. But we'll have to wait until then is overly restrictive. There's probably a counter argument that says you don't want to rock the boat so close to, European semi-finals or whatever. That's why I didn't do it at the end when didn't want to upset David Moyes when relegation still hung in the balance, that sort of thing. Look, there is an argument there, but I do think the argument for bringing him in and getting a director of football in early supersedes that. I think the benefits outweigh, I guess, the distractions on that. Anyway, there you go. It's just something I'm a little bit worried about it as I'm looking through the news each day and looking at players West Ham are linked with. I think, well, who's highlighting these players? Why are we in for him? Who's highlighted him? Are we likely to get him? And unfortunately, I just think at the moment, until we know the future of the director of football, the manager, probably the club itself, we're just in a state of limbo.